Hey everyone, Will the Watch Clicker here, and welcome back to the studio. It's been some time since I've had you all in here, but unfortunately, I've been busy with my personal life and haven't had too much time for video reviews or reviews of any sort. But I'm happy to be back with something familiar and something that you haven't seen before. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the DIY Watch Club Vintage Diver Kit. Now, this watch is a direct homage to the Rolex 5512 or 5513. And if you're anything like me, because I definitely had to look up those reference numbers, that is a vintage Rolex Submariner. This watch is going to be very much in direct proportion to those old vintage Submariners with a fully graduated bezel, 40mm case width, and those crown guards that I'm a huge fan of. DIY Watch Club has done things a little bit differently with this kit. They're including an acrylic crystal, where in the past most of their watches have had sapphire crystals. Although a lot of DIY Watch Club's watch kits do take inspiration from some other watches like Rolex Explorer or Seiko models, this one is directly Rolex inspired and is probably one of their first vintage inspired watch kits. Because I've assembled quite a few of these and I've done some videos in the past on that assembly process, right after my little talking head piece is done here, I'm going to have a sped up version of the assembly process if you want to check that out. If you want to see a more detailed process of how the watches get put together, hit the link right over whatever side it's on. I think it's over here. Go ahead and hit that link and I'll link over to one of the first DIY Watch Club kits that I assembled. If you're like me and you don't have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a vintage Rolex Submariner, this kit might be right up your alley. It also offers the ability to customize it as you're assembling it if you want to use some different parts, because a lot of the DIY watch kits do have compatibility with a lot of Seiko mod parts. So without further ado, let's jump into the video review of the DIY Watch Club DWC D01, their vintage diver. If you're picking up after the assembly process, the entire thing is as straightforward as you can get. DIY Watch Club provides excellent quality tools for the price, and a few of them have made it into my permanent watch toolkit. Their instructions are easy to follow, and once you assemble one or two of these watches, it is easy enough to do it without the instructions. Once you have the watch assembled, you're greeted with a capable dive watch that comes in at 40mm wide, 47.5mm lug to lug, and 13.3mm thick. That thickness includes the domed acrylic crystal, so it wears a little closer to 11mm wrist to crystal. This is what you want from a vintage-inspired dive watch. It is a manageable size without overtaking your wrist. While I wouldn't mind a millimeter or so being shaved off the lug to lug, I don't have any complaints about the way this watch fits on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. We're going to jump into some macro shots, and you'll probably notice some dust and smudges on the crystal. That was my fault while assembling the watch, and I fixed it since then, and you'll notice that in some of the other shots. As I said before, this watch comes pre-installed with an acrylic crystal, staying true to its vintage aesthetic. I'm sure there are some out there who will be groaning at the acrylic crystal, but I love it. Some of my favorite watches, vintage and modern, include acrylic crystals. Sapphire can be overrated in some applications. Yell at me in the comments if you feel you need to. The only part of the watch that feels somewhat out of place are the hands. I would have liked DIY Watch to use a less contemporary handset, especially considering they are DLC coated. Aside from the loomed parts of the hands, they almost completely disappear into the dial. With that said, there's nothing stopping you from ordering a different handset and using it while assembling the watch. I'm not the biggest Mercedes handset guy, but that would fit the part quite well on this watch. Everything else is spot on: 60-click bezel, solid loom application, and a push-pull crown, which will work perfectly fine for swimming. I've assembled several DIY Watch Club watches over the last couple years. In fact, I have nearly half a row in my watch box full of the watches I've put together. Each time I put one together, it goes a little faster, and I become a little more confident using the tools and techniques to assemble a watch. This renewed confidence in tinkering with small things like watch parts has made me want to learn more about watchmaking and maybe even give it a go on servicing one of my own watches. That's the joy I get out of this hobby now. If I can find a way to self-service my watches over the next several years, then the investment of time in something like putting together some fun watches like the ones from DIY Watch Club is worth it many times over. Thanks for checking out the video review of the DIY Watch Club Vintage Diver. For more reviews, head over to watchclicker.com. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe.